Shall we say the incomparable Miss Ann Coulter? Her new book is Never Trust a Liberal Over Three, especially a Republican. Also CNN political commentator Mark Lamont Hill. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Sure. I'll be here.
We're using the N-word really to spark a larger conversation about personal and professional consequences of saying the N-word. We've seen a lot of people lose their careers. We've seen many people become stars because of it. Is it okay, Mark, to say this word dozens of times in movies or albums? Does that make it okay?
It depends on what you mean by okay. If you mean as, let's get this out of the way, as a First Amendment matter, I think we all probably agree, at least the three of us, that you have a right to say it. And I don't think anyone wants to remove anyone's legal right to say it. So those people we can end that part of the conversation. But do I think a person should use it? Well, it depends on context. I think context matters with language more than anything else. In a movie about slavery, it would seem sort of odd for someone not to use the N-word. I would feel odd if a slave master was saying, hey, good fellow, could you go pick up that bale or tote that barge? That would be very strange to me. In music, I think people have freedom of expression. I mean, you talked about Kanye West's song, Niggas in Paris. And for me, particularly based on Kanye's interviews over the last few weeks, we see that it wasn't just a gratuitous use of the N-word. He was talking about the experience of being treated a certain way in a certain kind of cultural space. I will say, finally, that the guy who did the voiceover for that, the white guy that did the voiceover that said niggas in Paris, made me very uncomfortable. So it's context-driven.
And does hearing it so much in pop culture blur the lines of what's acceptable to most people in daily life?
It may be, especially with the young, aspiring white rap artists who want to be like Eminem. And I do think it makes a difference, obviously, if a white person or a black person says it. It's an ugly word. Unless you have Tourette syndrome, I don't think any white person should be saying it. I also think the N-word is different from many, many other words that everyone is always trying to compare to the N-word. As your segment at the beginning said, and I think it's correct, if the black experience is different from any other experience in America. There is slavery, there is Jim Crow, so I really do resent it when people come along and say, well, you can't say the phrase illegal alien when you use the N-word. You can't say retard when you say the N-word. You can't say, I don't know, a million other things. They're always comparing it to the N-word, so the main point I want to make is no other word is like the N-word.
And Coulter for the win, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody saw that coming.
CNN, people are going to say, Ann Coulter, this is one of the first times I've ever agreed with Ann Coulter, and it's on CNN. Mark this down in your calendar. But, Ann, you've always felt this way. This isn't new for you, right?
It's not only not new for me, this is standard Republican position. I mean, Justice Rehnquist,
and we're back.
Yeah, okay, hang on.
Now we're back to normal.
Yeah, there we go. There's the Ann Coulter we know, the one who wrote this book called Mugged, and the new one now, Never Trust
You're going to love it.
Trust
me, you're going to love it.
All right, stand by. We're going to talk much more about the N-word, guys, and a lot of other things. When we come right back, I want to talk about the words that have cost some people careers. Talking about words that cost some people their careers and made others into stars. So who decides what you can say? I'm back now with Ann Coulter and Mark Lamont Hill. Guys, Twitter is going crazy. People are saying, I can't deal with the that I just agreed with Ann Coulter. And you got them talking, especially about that.
Well, you tell them this is a Republican position. As I was saying, sorry, I didn't know we were cutting to a commercial break. This was always Justice Rehnquist's position on the Supreme Court with civil rights laws. Civil rights laws are for blacks. They were written after the Civil War. That is why we have the 14th and the 15th Amendment. It's not for smelly homeless people in public libraries. It's not for a lesbian who wants to take her date to the senior prom. It's not for feminists. It's not for illegal aliens. This is what civil rights is about, and I'm just stating the standard Republican position.
I saw Mark smile there when she said illegal aliens. Mark said, okay, there's the Ann Coulter we know. Listen, I want to warn everybody at home, though, that we're about to play a clip that is powerful and is controversial, but it makes an important point. It's one thing when adults use words like the N-word, but I want you to listen to this. The same words coming from the mouths of children. An agency in L.A. put this video together.
One call, niggas aim that tech. Headshot, nigga brains unstepped.
Okay, so that was mild. Most of this video we can't show you because kids use way more words than the N-word, derogatory things about women, women's body parts.
But that's a different set of issues.
Go ahead, Mark.
That's a different set of issues. I mean, the video you just showed some black and brown kids being looked upon in very negative light, with the use of the gun, the violent imagery.
There were white kids too.
Yeah. Oh, it's a black and white video. It's hard for me to see, but all those kids are being constructed in a very negative light, and I don't think to attach the N-word to that, of course, will make it problematic. But there's also context in which the N-word is used internally among black people in ways that don't reflect that sensibility.
Yeah, but the point of the video, Mark, is to show the effect that it has on children, and many of them black children. Go ahead.
But that's my point. That doesn't have the effect on it. Young kids are not going wayward because the N-word exists in the lexicon. People don't use the body language and image of a gun because of the N-word. They use it because of access to guns. People don't commit crimes because of that. They commit them because there's a lack of jobs. There's mass incarceration. I could list a range of things that lead to social decay, and none of them have to do with linguistics. And so that, for me, is deeply problematic. We can't keep becoming so religious about the N-word and think that if we can remove it from our public conversation, we can eliminate public problems.
Again, listen, the clip that we could play was the N-word. We couldn't play the kids saying the F-bomb or the P word for women's body parts. We couldn't play that. So, listen, this isn't just about the N-word, just about guns. It's talking about words that are used in popular culture and the effect that it has on children. Ann?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Mark said at the beginning. We're obviously not talking about the government regulating anything. And, yeah, fine, there's artistic freedom. But as a personal preference, yeah, I think it's way oversaid in popular culture. And it's one thing when it's when it's hip-hop music and it's telling a parable, the same way, country music songs talk about being unemployed and leaving your wife and everything else. It's not like you think the person singing really is doing these things. It's playing a character. So I don't really object to that, but, maybe don't play it for your kids. I will disagree with everything Mark said about it being a problem of joblessness. It is a problem of single motherhood. You know perfectly well, Mark Lamont Hale.
Well, one big contributor to single motherhood is mass incarceration, which is another issue that I mentioned. My point here,
No.
Oh, absolutely. That's just an empirical fact.
You're getting the chicken and the egg confused.
No. I got it right. But the point here, the point here is that there are a range of social issues that we could be invested in, but instead we've decided to invest it in the N-word. But let me just say this, that I think part of the reason is because I think it's one of the few things in public space that white people don't have unmitigated access to or unobstructed access to. And so people freak out about the N-word because they can't say it. I think that's a big problem here.
Yeah, but you said one thing that contributes to single parent is mass incarceration. Okay, yeah, that's one thing, but the biggest thing is people having unprotected sex. That's the biggest thing that contributes to, so you can't, just...
Unprotected sex leads to single parenthood?
Well, if you're having sex and you're single,
who's your biology
how
teacher?
do you have a kid? I mean, come on, let's be honest about that. Let's move on. Yeah,
because that's a really problematic way to think about that.
That is not a problematic way. The way you have kids is through sex. If you're in prison, chances are you're not having kids.
Don, but you're constructing a narrative that suggests that people should marry their way out of poverty.
No, I'm saying that you're saying that the biggest contributor is that it's not. I will admit to you it is one contributing factor, but it is not the biggest and only contributing factor. And you can't talk about one without talking about the other.
And I'm saying single parenthood is not the issue. When you say single parent, you're talking about not being married. Don.
Okay, all right. So
and that's just not true.
Let's move on. Listen, we're talking about the word police here, right? We're not the word police, but listen, I want to say we're just sticking with the N-word, but there are more words. The F word, and we're talking about fag. Why don't we just say it? And Coulter, you got in trouble, remember, a while ago saying that word, yet you defended Alec Baldwin when he said that word. Should that word be allowed to be used? Do you have the same stance on that as you do the N-word?
No. I definitely separate them. And ironically, my use of it illustrates exactly the point I was making, that blacks are being too generous with their experience in America. Yeah. Not everyone has that experience. That was a joke on a black actor, Isaiah Washington, who had called a fellow actor a faggot. And it became this huge continuing issue. There were like constant NASDAQ updates. Did he say it? Didn't he say it? Finally, he admitted he said it, and he was going into rehab for saying a word.
Didn't you say it about John Edwards?
And that's why I said, right in the middle of this whole thing, where he's going into rehab, again, for a word he used, which is madness. I said, and I had a few words to say about John Edwards, but apparently you can't use that word without going to rehab.
Okay.
That was the joke.
But that's the problem.
Quickly, Mark, quickly.
But think of this. My point on that is, this is a black man who does have the authentic suffering legacy that I think deserves some special treatment, and he's the one getting in trouble for saying a word.
Yeah, and
Mark Lamont Hill. Mark, you were, continue your thought, but I think you're probably going to go into the vein of, you know, a lot of people have been demonized, lost their careers about saying certain words. Do we really have a true freedom of speech in this country?
I mean, the question is, you do have freedom of speech, but freedom of speech comes with consequences. Again, you know, Paula Deen lost her empire, part of her empire, partly because sponsors didn't want to stand next to somebody who did that. Back in the day when Don Imus used the phrase nappy-headed hose, he lost his job largely because people went to the sponsors and said, we don't want to buy products from companies that advertise on this thing. So people always want the free market to decide. Republicans always want the free market to decide. Well, the free market decided. And when it comes to the F word for gay people, when it comes to inappropriate words for other people, I say, yeah, it doesn't have to have the exact same history as the N-word for me not to use it. As a straight person, I don't use derogatory terms against gay people because they've also had a history of oppression. They've also been denied access to marriage, which is why I'm stunned that you're vying for marriage to be this golden ideal here. I mean,
no, that's not what I'm saying. And listen, don't get it twisted. I said one of the reasons. It's not the only reason. You made it sound like we were talking about prison, that it was the only reason for single mothers. That's not it. I'm saying that's one of the reasons. And another reason is because of having unprotected sex. You cannot have kids without having sex, usually.
That is an astute observation.
Yes. So, I mean,
but the point is still wrong. But the point is still wrong.
Okay, let's get back to words.
Ann, go ahead real quick. I'm sorry. We're almost at the end of the show.
Yes, you're getting totally lost in single motherhood.
I'm sorry.
Look, the point with words like fags and retard is you wouldn't use those words to... if you were referring to an actual homosexual or to an actual retarded person. And also, I think all these words, and for every one of your examples, I can find someone who has used it and did not lose a career over it. So it's always just a power play.
Yeah, and you know, you said the market decided. The market really didn't decide on Paula Deen. It was really the heads of companies that took her up because people were still buying her products, and they said they were going to watch her show. Her book was #1, so I'm not sure the market decided with that.
The companies didn't want to look bad. Yeah. That's money-driven. You think companies did it out of feeling?
Thank you, guys. To be continued. Appreciate it. Ann Coulter, Mark.